Hello everyone, it's Lindsay, and today I'm back with another Word Study Wednesday for you guys. I'm trying to stick to my Wednesday schedule of doing these word focus cards. I will link down below the playlist of the past cards that I've done, so if you want to kind of see how I created these other ones in this set, and then I also have some additional cards from other sets of the word focus cards. You can check those out. That will be linked down below. Now, I did go ahead and see that Open Journeys shop is on vacation until August 24th, but I still wanted to go ahead and get this video up for you guys so you can still see the technique, still see the word. You can improvise with what you have on hand, and I will link everything down below, but just keep in mind any Open Journey links won't be active until after August 24th when she gets back from vacation. So just heads up on that. It's going to be a fairly simple card as far as embellishment goes, but I have a fun technique that I wanted to show you guys. But if you're not familiar with these word focus cards, I will link the video down below that kind of talks about them, how I do a word study, how I use the Blue Letter Bible app to do my word study, all that goodness. So I'm going to just dive right in as if you guys are already kind of doing this with me and know how to do the word study portion. So the next card in the stack is the word faithfulness. And as always, Ingrid has a wide variety of Bible verses for us to look up. You'll see some variations. Sometimes it's used as faithfulness. Sometimes it's just the word faith, depending on how it's being addressed in those verses. So you will see that. And I went ahead and just picked the first verse again. I looked through all of them, looked them up, read them, and this is the one that kind of stuck out to me, which is Galatians 5:22. Now, I've gone ahead and done my word study already. I did it on a separate piece of cardstock. This is cut to 4 by 5, 4 inches by 5 inches, and then I round the corners. That way I can just attach it to the back of the card once we're done decorating the card. But for the word faithfulness, for Galatians 5:22, that verse is, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness." And then it goes on to list out the rest of the fruits of the Spirit. So I know many of you are familiar with that. But, you know, faithfulness is one of those words that we see all the time. We use it all the time, but what is it? What is the actual definition? So when I went into the Blue Letter Bible app, they had this longer definition that's part of the Strong's Concordance definition, but they also include like an excerpt from the Greek lexicon. So I included that too because it was kind of a simpler definition. So the main definition says credence, moral conviction of religious truth or the truthfulness of God or a religious teacher, especially reliance upon Christ for salvation, abstractly constancy in such profession, by extension, the system of religious gospel truth itself, assurance, belief, believe, faith, fidelity. But the Greek lexicon simplifies it just a little bit. It says the conviction that God exists and is the creator and ruler of all things, the provider and bestower of eternal salvation through Christ. And that's what it means to be faithful. And as you go through the Blue Letter Bible app, it'll break down faithfulness as far as in regards to God and his faithfulness to us and our faithfulness to him. You'll kind of see 2 different viewpoints in there, and it explains all of that. So you can put as many notes as you want down on here. You can see I get messy. These are functional. This is part of the study process. I don't redo these cards. So I ran this through my typewriter and there's like some imperfections. I misspelled some things. Words are running off of the page. That is okay. I want it to just, you know, this is the study portion. So I went ahead and did that on a separate piece of cardstock. And so we'll go ahead and put this card together. Now, this technique is something fun that I saw from Heidi Swap and Tim Holtz. I'm going to try to link their IGTV down below where they showed this technique. This is definitely inspired by that video, but I thought it would be a fun one to share with you guys. And you can do this ahead of time, make a bunch of these panels or cards or however you want to do it, and have them on hand to attach to the cards, create journaling cards, different things like that. So you didn't need to rely on Open Journeys shop being open to do this technique. So what we're going to be doing is using a 3D embossing folder. Everything will be linked down below for you guys. We're going to do kind of a letterpress technique where we ink up the folder, and that's going to give us the color in the background, and then it's going to emboss it and give us some texture. But then we're going to add some gold foiling. So I don't know if you can see, this is actually a rose gold foiling that's applied just to the high points of that texture, and that's using some Mink Heidi Swap toner ink. This goes along with her line of Mink products. If you check out the IGTV between her and Tim Holtz takes it and does, his grungy, different aesthetic. And so it's super neat to see the different ways to use this ink. So I just recently picked it up, played with it today, and we're going to give it a go. So I got some of that. Now, as far as foils go, of course, Heidi Swap recommends using her Mink branded foils, but I did go ahead and try this with the Deco foil and it worked just the same. So I'm going to link both of these down below. You need some kind of foil that reacts with toner. And so that's what both of these do. And then Heidi Swap does have her Mink laminating machine, which of course is the advised machine to use. I don't have that. I have just a regular laminator. It gets the job done. You do have to run it through several times to get it to work, but it works for me. So I'm going to link both options down below, the Mink and the machine that I have, so you can pick and choose which one you want to use. But we're going to gold foil the top of that, which is going to be really, really fun. So I'm going to show you how we're going to create this little panel to stick on the front. Now, typically I work directly on the card. For this technique, I'm going to go ahead and do it on a separate piece of cardstock and then attach it. Just that way, if anything goes wrong, I'm not ruining my card. And it just, I think, will be a little bit easier. And to kind of show you guys, you can make a bunch of these ahead of time. Now for the embellishment, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. I have this piece here that Ingrid sent me with one of my packages from her, and it was personalized. So you can't order this specific personalized embellishment, but she does sell these embellishment clusters in her shop. Again, it'll be open August 24th. And so they include this little die cut piece, and then she stitches some texture on there. But I wanted to go ahead and show it because you could easily make these as well if you have a bunch of textures. So, fabrics and lace and burlap and stitching it all together. And then you could even run some fabric through a typewriter or use your stamps. So if you've got alphabet stamps, you can stamp with STAYS-ON ink or archival ink and make little personalized clusters like that. So I'm going to use this as just my main embellishment. I do have a couple of die cut pieces from the Do You Love Me kit that I'm going to include in there as well. But the embellishment will be pretty simple. This is mostly going to just be showing this fun technique here. So I will have everything linked down below for you guys. Let's go ahead and put you on fast forward and I will walk you through how to put this card together.
Okay, so I'm going to start with just a plain piece of cardstock that I've cut down, and then I have this botanical folder. One side is flat and one side has the bumps on it. So we're going to add some Distress Oxide ink to the flatter side of the folder. This is in Iced Spruce, and I'm just adding a generous amount on there. Now, I have not figured out how to get a smooth look like Tim Holtz does, so I need to play with it a little bit more, but we're going to roll with it. I spray my cardstock on both sides of it, and then I did mist the folder a little bit as well. And then I'm going to run this through my Platinum 6 die cutting machine. Now, I don't have the appropriate sandwich. I've mentioned this before, so do this at your own risk, but this is what works for me. I use the base plate, the folder, and then I use the embossing mat over the top, and it moves around and wiggles a little bit, but it gets the job done. So each machine will have a different type of sandwich to do for these 3D embossing folders. And then to clean it, I just use a baby wipe. These inks are water reactive, so it's super easy to clean up. You do want to make sure that you clean your folder really, really well, because if you go to use it again for a different project, it may transfer ink to your paper, so just be careful. So you can see it is a little bit splotchy, but this will all kind of blend out as we add some more things to it and as it dries, and it will all work out. So make sure that was good and dry. And then now we're going to use the toner ink. So I'm just using a pipette to draw out a little bit of this ink and stick it onto a non-stick craft mat. And then I'm going to roll a brayer tool through this. And you're going to just kind of roll it and work it until it starts to get not so slick and shiny. It starts to get a little tacky. Now, this stuff you kind of have to fuss with and play with because it does dry fairly quickly, and then it's not usable. You can't use it once it's sticky and dry. So you just gotta kind of figure out what the right tackiness is. And then I'm just rolling that over the high points of that panel. And then I'll sit that aside to dry and clean up my mess. Now you can do a whole bunch of these panels all at one time. There's no time limit before you run it through with the foil. So once it's on the cardstock, you can set those aside and come back to them and foil them. So you could sit there and do this to a whole stack of panels and things, and then just foil them all at the same time. I found it easiest to clean off of my nonstick mat when it's dry and just a dry paper towel. And then on my brayer tool, I pull my brayer tool off, and then I have some alcohol in this dispenser, and I'm just using a little bit of alcohol on a paper towel to clean it off of my brayer tool. And it'll clean it off of my surface and things like that when I use the alcohol. So now we can get to foiling. So I'm going to cut down some of this deco foil so that it covers that panel. So I just kind of eyeball it, lay it over there. And then I just have a piece of copy paper folded in half. I'm going to use that as my carrier sheet. And then here is my Scotch laminator. I set mine to the 5 mil setting and then run this through it. And I go through like 3 or 4 passes. Again, the Mink machine has different settings and is meant to be used with the Mink toner ink, but I don't have that. I'm just using a laminator. So it is not perfect, but it gets the job done for this technique. So then I let it cool for a couple seconds, and then as I pull the foil back, you'll see that the foil has now adhered to everywhere where that black toner ink was. It still looks like a mess. That's okay. We are going to add some more things to it. So this is just part of the process. But before I distress it, I'm going to lay it over my other word card and cut off any excess. Don't throw away that little piece because you can use that as an embellishment on something else later. You've already done the work. Set it aside, use it in your little scrap bin. So pulled out my nonstick craft mat once again, and now we're going to add a little bit more color and kind of distress this panel a little bit. So I'm using some regular distress inks in old paper and frayed burlap. This is kind of my go-to color palette right now as I work through these cards. I'm just using a blending tool. I'm going heavier on the edges and then just lightly brushing it over the top of the panel. This is going to help blend everything together and give it more of a distressed look. It's going to add just some more dimension. These 3D folders have all kinds of little nooks and crannies that the ink catches a hold of differently. So it gets darker in some areas than others, and it's just really going to liven this up. It looks like old wallpaper or something. I don't know. It's just super cool how this technique comes out. And the foil resists the ink, so it stays nice and foiled like that. And then you can add whatever inks, sprays, whatever you want on top of there. I did lay a baby wipe over the top of it just to kind of lighten some areas and blend it a little bit. My initial panel, I used speckled egg. This one I used ice spruce, and so it was a little bit darker. I'm also spraying a little bit of just plain water on there, letting that sit for a few seconds, and then drying it. Because the ice spruce was distress oxide ink, it will oxidize every time you add water, and it'll just give it a softer look. So there is a look at that finished panel piece. And I'm going to lay aside this one here so you can see the difference between the speckled egg background and the ice spruce background. Just a little bit of variance there. And now we can start assembling. So I'm going to use some liquid glue since this is really textured on the back side, and then stick that down onto my word focus card. I like to kind of work towards the top and leave the bottom nice and clean. This is just kind of how I've been doing these cards. And then I'm going to attach that fabric cluster. You could also use fabric tack glue. That might have been a better choice for this, but definitely some kind of liquid adhesive because you're adhering this over the top of that textured panel. When you run it through the laminator, it does smooth it out just a little bit. So if you want to bring back the texture from that texture folder, you could run this panel back through the embossing folder and it will intensify the texture. But for this particular project, I was okay with it being a little bit flatter. Those folders are so detailed that even going through the laminator a couple times, it's still got a lot of texture to it. Now I'm going to add the Strong's Concordance number to the bottom of here. I've already loaded up the stamps on a stamp block. This is using the Matthew alpha and numbers from By the Well for God, so I will link those down below. And I'm just inking them up in that same iced spruce distress oxide ink and then stamping it. I am 3 cards into this project and realized that I messed up. So my intention was to finish all these cards and then coil bind them at the top, but I did not leave myself enough room at the top to punch the holes. So we're going to have to figure out a different way to display these cards. Stay tuned for that. I have some ideas in mind, but if you're going to be coil binding these, make sure that you leave yourself enough room at the top don't do what I did. So we will not be using the cinch machine to coil bind these all together, but that's okay. I will find something else creative and fun to do for displaying these, but we're going to continue on. So then I can attach that definition card to the back of the word focus card. And there's a look at the finished card. In person, you can see all the little nooks and crannies and texture in that foil. It's absolutely stunning. Here's a look at the 3 cards that we've created so far in this series. Again, those videos will be linked down below for you guys. I love how these are coming out. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave those down below. Check out the description box for links to everything that I used in today's video. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed. And until next time, thank you so much. Bye-bye.